We're going to head into a discussion, fireside chat with Maxine Bleiweis, who is the head of the Westport Library and an entrepreneur herself. And I say that because Maxine is really a visionary and innovator in library, how we use libraries. And the Westport Library is our partner, and as I said, we asked them if we could use space here, but they've turned into so much more of a partner. So maybe first you could tell us how libraries are sort of evolving, how Westport Library and others are really evolving to be the next generation libraries.
Sure. First of all, I'm just thrilled that you're all here because I hope after these sessions are over, you're always here. And you are in a room surrounded by a past of entrepreneurs in Westport. These black and white works on paper were from all the famous artists and illustrators in Westport. And guess where they gathered? In this place, or the place where it originally was across the street, because being an artist and illustrator is a very lonely profession. So they came together to use something called a picture file. Can you imagine? These things in folders that they pulled out and looked at for inspiration rather than the internet. And while they did that, they connected with each other. And friendships grew and support grew, and some threw a job to somebody else, and wonderful things happened. So libraries that are really thinking about it always should be economic development partners with people in their community, because you need everybody to thrive. I go back even farther in my thinking about where we are today to 1908 when that building was built, our original library was built across the street, and think about what Mark just said about sex and free. The lintel above says open to all, and that's absolutely true. And I also know how many people met somebody at the library or said they were, like that Beach Boys song. But there was tons to learn in 1908. The immigrants were flooding into the country. Often it was the younger person in the household who learned the language and was the interpreter. You know, fast forward to today, I don't know about you, but it's really handy to have an 11-year-old around to bail you out in a lot of your day-to-day technology. So libraries are about learning. They're not about inventory. Those books that kind of crowded out all our spaces were really not necessarily a great thing, because as they crowded out the spaces, new spaces weren't created for people to gather. So we're very much back to the future. But Jen, back to where libraries are. I remember in the 80s putting personal computers in a public library, and it was the first place most people touched a personal computer. We roll forward, we have 5 3D printers upstairs. 15,000 people entered into what's called a makerspace upstairs last year, most of them seeing a 3D printer for the first time. In 3 weeks, we're 2-foot-tall robots are arriving here, because we predict robotics is the next big thing. You need to know about it. No matter what your relationship will be with robotics, you need to know about it. And the load leveler is the public library.
So the Maker, could you elaborate a little bit more on the Maker program, the Makerspace, and how the refinery fits into that, and what other people you've had as makers in residence?
Oh my goodness, we've had, and I shouldn't go any farther without pointing out some of the key staff people in this room, because they will continue to be your resources. Bill Derry is our Assistant Director for Innovation. And we purposely titled that because that's what Bill does. He brings innovation to us. Bonnie Rosenberg is in the back. She's our intern in that space. Margie Farlick-Den is right there. She's a reference librarian who specializes in helping people with business questions. You can book her one-on-one and sit down with your questions and your need for information. So key people here. Entrepreneurs have been coming to that makerspace ever since we created it 3 years ago with ideas. Our first entrepreneur is really exciting. He had an idea to stick a device into the car receptacle to keep you from texting and talking while the car is in motion. That's out on Indiegogo right now, I believe. The next one was a radiologist who had an idea to make a mini catheter to be used during chemotherapy. It just keeps going and going. But, and they're not just coming into a space with a 3D printer, they're coming into a place that supports them in furnishing information for their business plans. And a space that's a very positive, hopeful space. It's a space you feel uplifted coming to. And we have great coffee.
Can you talk a little bit about how the library, there's a new plan for a new library in Westport, and just paint a picture. I've seen some of the pictures, but it will be mostly meeting spaces and gathering spaces. Can you just paint that picture?
That's right. Libraries used to be places where things were stored. And you came in, you got something, you left, like the grocery store. Now we're more like the kitchen. You come in, you gather all your resources, and most of those are probably human resources, people that you're getting together with. So it's critical that there are spaces that say, come together and work together. Janice and Jen were telling me that as they've been working with you, that the entrepreneurial spirit is fast. You wanna get in and start working. Time is of the essence. Well, right now, you come in here, you stand and you wait for somebody to help you to reserve a space. Maybe you get into it, maybe you don't. That's not conducive to it. So what we're creating are spaces that really enhance learning, gathering, connecting.
And sort of, what other roles do you see for the library in helping to support entrepreneurship besides being meeting spaces and any other things, that information?
Yeah, when people ask me what I do, I say it really feels like being the head of a university that has no tuition, no entrance exams, and is open to everybody. And that everybody part is so critical. In classes that Bill arranged for the summer, they range from people aged 8 to 88. There's nothing like bringing together all those ages in the same space with the same thinking. So as you're thinking about, your product, have a young person help you with how do they react to that if they're someone who's going to wear it, etc. I also see libraries as spaces where, as you're inventing things, you can try them out. We'd love to be kind of library as launch pad. A place of thought incubation. I've been talking to furniture people about that. What better place to put a piece of furniture than a place that has 1,200 people a day walking in and using it? You can observe, see how it's working, and it's a win-win for everybody.
Well, I love that, because we're advocating the lean approach where you do an MVP and you put out some assumptions, you test them, but you have to test it with some people, and you've done that with some of our entrepreneurs, and I think they've gotten really valuable, and then they pivoted or whatever they needed to do. Does anyone else have some questions for Maxine? I'd like to throw it out.
So, just watching the success of the Westport Library over the last couple of years, you seem to have an ability to convince people to make great change. And whether it's here and saying, let's go buy some robots, or if you go to Moscow and you say, okay, this is how you really, do you have an approach or a toolkit that you sort of set in your mind? I'm about to go ask people to change their ways. Here's how I do it. Here's the best way to approach that.
I think the key thing you just said was change their ways. We're not asking people to change their ways. We're observing what's going on in your life that you need something more with, that you've never even thought of. I'm sure if we went around and had you all define what library is, it's not what I just talked about. So we need to really listen to what's the biggest challenge, what are your challenges, and how are we doing it? And then there's no convincing, because it becomes obvious that sure, I need that.
First of all, I have to say, you gotta love a library that has a cafe. I noticed that right at the outset.
But on top of that, our cafe uses as much as possible locally sourced products.
Oh, that's great.
So that's a win-win.
I live in Manhattan, so I've only been here twice to attend this program. So it's really neat to see what you're doing here. And I'm wondering, is this part of like an overall movement about like where library is going, or you know, this is the first thing I've ever. I think it's a really neat idea because you know.
You know, I wanted to bring just a couple of props in case I forgot, but back in the 90s, I wrote this book called Helping Business, the Library's Role in Community Economic Development. So libraries all over have been sticking their toe in the water about this. What libraries don't have are great marketing departments. And we have to kind of overcome those kinds of things. But no matter where you live, my guess is your library could be very important in helping you to further your plans. We've been out talking about this for years, and I think the entrepreneur movement is only accelerating it. Before I was here, I was in another town in Connecticut. We used to make sales calls to businesses to find out what their information needs were. Now it's harder to find those businesses. Instead, they're you in your home. So we have to market differently. So any of you who want to lend some of your marketing expertise to us, we'll be happy to take it.
Just a quickie. Do you is there like a statewide group of library directors that meet to share these ideas?
There are lots of national library networks, local ones, but you know, I'm fond of saying there's no library god up there who's telling us all what to do. Every single library is different, for better or worse. In Connecticut, there are 169 towns, 169 libraries. While we have some reciprocal borrowing among us and agreements, it's everybody for themselves. So each community decides how much they're going to support their library and how, and it's all different.
It's too bad. It'd be nice if they were all these ideas could float around.
Well, they're floating.
Yes.
They just haven't landed.
I just had a quick question. You mentioned that there's plans for a new library, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about what's the time frame, or you said would have meeting space. Is it going to be in the same location, or are there any other?
Right. Oh, this location is to die for. To be right on a river, right adjacent to the downtown, have lots of contiguous parking all over the place. So this is absolutely the location. We'll be using as much of this existing building as possible, but repositioning it so that it takes advantage of. You won't be in a room without windows. Let me put it that way. After the library is done, so that you can look out over. Every space is going to be flexible, so that it can morph from one thing in the morning, afternoon, weekends, and just totally encourage that space. Big auditorium that C-SPAN tries to come and film from here because our content is so exciting, and they just give up and go home. I expect we'll be a content creator and distributor once that all happens, and that's going to be really exciting too. We're lucky. Westport is a thought incubator. It's a place where tons of great business plans have originated. Lots of books have been written, etc. The library should be at the center of that. Should be that thought incubator. I know a lot of you really well. Some of you know not at all. So any of you that I know really well, if you want to make sure I say something that I haven't yet, please pop in.
You know, I just want to talk a little bit more about the makerspace and how you can use it as an entrepreneur. Because one of the entrepreneurs that I coach that's not in the program, she's pretty wonderful. I'm just going to give you that example. Is Kate Pipa, and she has created a company called Genius Box, which is a monthly subscription box of STEM toys for young children. And so she met me here for a mentoring coaching meeting, and noticed there was a makerspace and said, "Oh my God, I would love to have a tour." So we walked over, and this young guy, Jacob, who was, I think, 11. Is he 11?
He's 12.
12. Going on 30. Introduced himself to her and said, "Can I show you around?" And he was so impressive. And so Kate said, "All I want to do is come back and work with Jacob and get his feedback on my product." And so really, she's been after me, because I haven't scheduled this yet. She wants to do a brainstorming session with Jacob. And Mr. Derry, I always still call you Mr. Derry, I apologize. Bill said, absolutely, we can do that. And she said, could we actually even have more kids? And absolutely, we can do that. So the Makerspace, if you haven't seen it, is incredible. And there are other resources besides even the people that actually work at the library, but some of the kids that have been volunteering here during the summer come over and teaching classes and teaching adults how to do things that none of us knew how to do. It's an incredible resource that we're looking to see how we can do more with the Makerspace going forward with our entrepreneurs. How do we really integrate that into this program in a way that to leverage what's going on there? I think is a very cool idea.
Bill, would you like to talk a little bit about any of the entrepreneurs that we've got?
Interestingly, we have this guy that just invented a pretty great product. He dropped in, he was unable to find me for some time, so he had been hanging out in the Makerspace, really admiring how kids were, what he said, looking at becoming future inventors. And then he brought in his product. Now, this product, 9 weeks ago, he had the idea. And since then, had created a video, had contacted a company, has sold 100 of them before they even have been produced, has a designer in Romania who is designing the STL files, and dropped off the STL files yesterday. And we have a heavy-duty 3D printer, U-print printer, so we printed out these files and just soaked them and took half the batch out. And I mean, it's just exciting. We didn't do the design, but what we did is just get him to the point where he could have a prototype that is real. I mean, this is pretty durable. This stuff could almost be the end product, but then you want to take it and make it a little more strong. So that's one recent example that's going on right now.
What is it?
Yeah, I'd rather not say what it is to the whole group. Well, it's a form of a pump. It's a form of a pump. He's a kiter. He blows up kites and gets on the water with these kites. So it's a special pump that there isn't one around like it that acts in a new way.
And you know what's really important to mention is taking that prototype this week, today or tomorrow, to a VC guy that he's looking for funding. And so the VC guy happens to be a kite surfer who really needs this product desperately, had heard about it through his sister and said, basically canceled his meeting so he could be with them. Wow. So this is a great story about a combination of an entrepreneur, the library, and venture capital.
And he works at Sikorsky.
Yeah. Well, we like Sikorsky.
Yeah, we do too.
I think the fact that anybody and everybody can come in here and anything is possible. You can't fail here. One of our other favorite stories is a woman named Nikki McCabe, who's probably in her 70s. She works with the blind, and she was frustrated that she couldn't find materials to teach math, geometry in particular, to people who are blind. So she came over and learned the 3D printer, kicking and screaming, right, Bill? And then she, it wasn't natural. And then she couldn't find items to download from the website where we usually find items. So she learned CAD design, kicking and screaming. Now she's developed items based on MC Escher to put together for people who are blind and understand that. She came in last Friday, all excited because she had a prototype for Goodnight Moon. With not just the moon printed out in 3D, but the Braille words, because she said for the youngest it's so critical to learn letters, and Braille is the only and best way to do that. But again, she's in an environment that everything's okay, and everything will get better as we work together. So I think that's really important too. Any of you who have found, any advice for us on how to help spread that word? It really often is word of mouth is the best. It's like you need libraries often at turning points in your life. We find people show up here when they've just had their first child, or their work experience is changing, or they're retiring, or they're starting a business, or they've just been diagnosed with something, or something. And that's when they turn to an institution that they know is here through thick and thin. Peter, you did your video blog thing here, right?
I used to record, when I was I had just left IBM and I was starting my consulting business, and to build up sort of my personal brand, I would do a video blog in the conference rooms upstairs.
With a guy we introduced you
Yeah,
to.
exactly. Oh, guy I met in this room.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, John Lawson, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I always agree.
Every week, it feels like, certainly every month, we do events. We do 1,600 events in this building. Many of them are to support businesses. We work a lot with SCORE and other kinds of organizations. So this is our newsletter for the next 2 months. Get on our email mailing list, friend us on Facebook. You'll see we're on Pinterest, Instagram, the whole thing. We also try to put out information that does double duty. And believe it or not, I get some of my best ideas from the Costco newsletter. I don't even shop at Costco. Someone else might. But I read that thing backwards and forwards. And we were in the midst of putting together our annual report last year, and Marcia Logan, our communications person, was there, and I think was going to kill me because we were pretty far along, and I said, I just read about this thing called augmented reality. Augmented reality is kind of a layering on top of a flat piece of paper that brings things to life. You can embed videos and audio stuff into these things. So there we were on deadline, and we learned augmented reality enough to be able to put it here. So this airplane, there are 2 of them that hang upstairs in the Great Hall. And please, 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 don't just come into this room today. Go upstairs before you leave. This is a half-scale GB fighter that was made here by all ages of people learning math and physics and everything else. But if you download the app called Erasma and put it on there, it will start flying. You'll see a whole video on it. And inside, annual reports can be pretty dry, so the pictures there, if you put the app on it, people will be talking. It just makes it come alive. And of course, because we're a library, we have a page in there telling you how to do it also. So that's all. It's also part of having fun while you're at work.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.